Man's vicious slap on an innocent black child's face unleashes a hidden storm of Mafia vengeance that no one saw coming. In the dim glow of a roadside diner somewhere in the American South during the tense 1960s, a burly white man with a sneer etched into his face raised his hand without hesitation. The sharp slap echoed through the hushed room, landing squarely on the cheek of a small black boy who had done nothing more than spill a drop of water while refilling glasses. The boy's eyes widened in shock and pain, his tiny frame stumbling back against the counter. Whispers rippled among the patrons, some averting their gazes, others smirking in silent approval. But hidden in the shadows of that ordinary evening was a secret that would shatter the bully's world. A connection to power far beyond the diner's greasy walls, one rooted in the underworld where loyalty and vengeance reigned supreme. What unfolded next would expose the raw underbelly of prejudice, turning a simple act of cruelty into a storm of reckoning. The year was 1963, a time when the civil rights movement simmered like a pot ready to boil over. Yet in small towns like Elmwood, Mississippi, the old ways clung stubbornly to every corner. The diner, aptly named Sonny's Spot, stood as a relic of segregation's grip, its faded sign promising hot coffee and home-cooked meals, but only to those deemed worthy by unspoken rules. Black families knew to enter through the back, order takeout if at all, and never linger. Yet on this sweltering summer afternoon, young Jamal Thompson, just 8 years old, found himself inside those walls, not as a customer, but as an unwitting helper. Jamal's mother, Etta, worked the kitchen shifts, scrubbing pots and flipping burgers for pennies, her weary hands bearing the scars of endless labor. She had brought Jamal along that day because school was out, and leaving him alone in their cramped shotgun house on the outskirts wasn't safe, not with the Klan's shadows lurking after dark. Etta dreamed of a better life for her son, whispering stories of far-off cities where black children could sit at any counter without fear. But dreams were fragile in Elmwood. Enter Harlan Crow, the bully in question, a hulking figure in his 40s, with a beer gut straining against his stained shirt and a reputation for enforcing the town's invisible lines. Harlan owned a nearby auto shop, but his real power came from his loud mouth and quick fists, often aimed at anyone who challenged the status quo. He was the kind of man who spat slurs like tobacco juice, believing his whiteness granted him dominion over the diner and its help. That day, Harlan sauntered in for his usual booth, barking orders at the white waitress while eyeing Etta's movements in the back with disdain. Unbeknownst to everyone in Elmwood, Jamal's father, Marcus Thompson, was no ordinary man. Marcus had left the South years ago, fleeing the lynch mobs that claimed his own brother, and reinvented himself in the gritty underbelly of Chicago. There, he rose through the ranks of the Black Mafia, a network born from necessity, protecting communities abandoned by the law. Marcus wasn't just a member, he was the boss, commanding respect through a blend of cunning strategy and unyielding force. He sent money home quietly, ensuring Etta and Jamal survived, but he kept his world separate to shield them from danger. Rumors of his influence whispered through underground channels, but in sleepy Elmwood, no one connected the dots. As Harlan settled into his seat, nursing a grudge against the changing times, the stage was set for an intersection of worlds that would ignite like dry tinder. Curiosity hung in the air. How long could such fragile peace hold before the spark? As the diner buzzed with the afternoon crowd, truckers nursing black coffee, locals gossiping about the latest freedom riders stirring trouble up north, Jamal moved cautiously through the space, his small hands clutching a pitcher of water. Etta had tasked him with refills to keep him occupied, her eyes darting protectively toward him from the kitchen pass-through. The air thick with the scent of frying onions and cigarette smoke, Jamal approached Harlan's table last, his heart pounding under the man's glare. A slight tremor in his grip sent a single drop cascading onto Harlan's sleeve, an accident born of nerves. Harlan's face twisted into a mask of fury, his chair scraping back as he stood. The slap came swift and brutal, the impact sending Jamal reeling, a red welt blooming on his dark skin. The room fell to a stunned hush, broken only by the clatter of the pitcher hitting the floor. Etta froze in the kitchen, her scream caught in her throat, knowing any outburst could cost her job or worse. Patrons shifted uncomfortably. Some white men chuckled lowly, reinforcing the bully's dominance, while others, perhaps with a shred of conscience, looked away. But hidden in the shadows of that ordinary evening was a secret that would shatter the bully's world. A connection to power far beyond the diner's greasy walls, one rooted in the underworld where loyalty and vengeance reigned supreme. Word of the incident spread like wildfire through Elmwood's black community that evening. Whispers in back alleys and church basements painted Harlan as the latest enforcer of Jim Crow's remnants, his act a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities black families faced. Etta, nursing Jamal's bruise with a cold cloth in their modest home, fought back tears. She had shielded her son from the worst stories, but now the wound was literal. Unseen by all, a phone call was made. A neighbor, loyal to Marcus from old ties, relayed the news northward. In Chicago, Marcus received the update in his dimly lit office, surrounded by trusted lieutenants. His face hardened, the paternal fury mixing with the cold calculation of a man who had built an empire from ashes. Tension mounted as days passed. Harlan, emboldened by the lack of repercussions, boasted about the lesson at his auto shop, drawing nods from like-minded locals. He patrolled the diner more frequently, his presence a looming threat. Jamal, traumatized, clung to his mother, his once bright curiosity dimmed by fear. Etta noticed subtle changes. Anonymous deliveries of food and money appearing at their door, signals from Marcus's network activating quietly. The emotional stakes rose with each passing hour. Jamal's innocence shattered, Etta's helplessness deepening, and the community's silent outrage simmering toward a boil. Racial injustice, often buried under layers of normalcy, now pulsed openly, drawing invisible lines tighter. Yet beneath it all, a shadow approached from the north, promising a shift that no one in Elmwood could anticipate. The air grew heavier, charged with the inevitability of confrontation. The confrontation erupted on a muggy Friday evening, the diner packed with the weekend crowd oblivious to the gathering storm. Harlan lounged in his usual booth, regaling his cronies with exaggerated tales of his stand against what he called the encroaching disorder. Jamal, still bearing the faint mark on his cheek, stayed hidden in the kitchen, but Etta's nerves frayed with every glance toward the door. Then, without fanfare, a sleek black sedan pulled up outside, its tinted windows reflecting the sunset like a warning. Marcus stepped out, his tailored suit cutting a sharp figure against the diner's weathered facade. Flanked by two imposing associates, he entered with the quiet authority of a man who commanded rooms without raising his voice. The air shifted immediately. Patrons sensed the change, conversations trailing off as eyes turned toward the newcomers. Harlan, mid-laugh, caught sight of Marcus and straightened, his bravado masking a flicker of unease. He didn't recognize the face, but the aura screamed trouble. Trouble from a world beyond Elmwood's petty hierarchies. Marcus's gaze locked onto Etta first, a brief, tender acknowledgement that spoke volumes of their shared history. Then it swept to Harlan, piercing through the bully's facade. The tension peaked as Marcus approached the booth, his presence drawing the room into a vacuum of anticipation. Harlan rose, puffing his chest, ready to assert his dominance in familiar territory. But Marcus's men positioned themselves strategically, blocking exits without a word, their stance a silent promise of escalation. In that charged moment, the diner's microcosm of racism cracked open. Harlan's cronies shifted uncomfortably, realizing this wasn't a local dispute. Marcus, drawing from years of navigating treacherous underworld dealings, confronted the bully not with immediate violence, but with a calculated revelation. Whispers from his network had uncovered Harlan's own vulnerabilities. Debts to shady lenders, a history of crossing lines that even his white privilege couldn't fully erase. The emotional peak surged as Jamal peeked from the kitchen, witnessing his father's arrival like a guardian emerging from myth. Harlan's face drained of color as the implications dawned. This wasn't just about a slap. It was a reckoning for the systemic cruelty that allowed such acts to flourish unchecked. The stakes skyrocketed. Harlan's world teetering on exposure, Eda's family on the brink of protection or peril. The diner, once a bastion